Hello, and welcome to The Weed Out, where we weed through the bullshit. It's Spencer and Joanna, as always, and we're here today to talk about civility politics. And what does that mean? How does it get used against us? It seems like the thing that most people would say is common sense. It's actually societal conditioning, and a tool that's mostly used by the oppressor to disregard the complaints of the oppressed, and to downplay valid emotions and valid reactions. Civility, as a concept, is used to try to keep people from being rude or divisive, or at least that is typically the reason given by someone asking for civility. People often see it as a sign of mutual respect. We as a society use this concept of civility to covertly control people's reactions and behaviors, and this is especially true with dealing with the government, community, and family relations as well, on all levels. We have seen this ourselves, Joanna and I, when giving public comment in a number of communities, and counselors or select board members will refuse to allow a member of the community to have a tone that is, quote, disrespectful, end quote, to avoid it appearing like a conflict. In Northampton, the city council president, Councilor Nash, and others went on long tangents to the public about how they would be more effective and should want to show respect if people kept their public comments civil, meaning the price of admission is speaking properly. Some people don't understand that this is also a class division. Having gone to a preparatory high school, they teach you how to conduct yourself with civility and professionalism and how you should look. Don't show up to an interview in a t-shirt and jeans. Even.
Exactly.
There's a lot to talk about this topic, so I'm going to take a break and let Joanna kind of do her spiel on how civility politics ruin and run her existence from her perspective. And so how are you doing today, Joanna?
I'm doing good. Thanks for asking. I hope everyone is. I think you did a good job of letting people know what civility politics kind of entail. If you mentioned even community and family relations, so I think a good example were the Northampton City Council meetings this summer. It definitely felt like tone policing in a community where I have seen since 2020, after George Floyd's murder, very angry public commenters, far more angry than we were this past summer even. And it's their right to be angry. They don't need to have to be nice about things that are upsetting them in their community. And when I say their community, I consider, like, if you're a resident or someone that does business or visits that community, you're part of that community as well. So that was another issue, I think, with the civility politics in Northampton that really kind of was jarring, is once they didn't like what we were saying and how we were being respectful, then it was like they'd come up with other reasons. And I know Spencer was upset about this too, and a number of other people that I know who just do business or work in Northampton. Like, if you didn't live there or then own property there, it kind of like started a level of like who's allowed to talk more than others, especially if you're being angry. So it just leads you down rabbit holes to kind of single people out. And I think, like I said, like, being angry and talking calmly doesn't make you any more worthy of being heard. And I know that as a society, we're taught, like, you should be respectful and you should be warm when addressing others. Like, as a woman, I especially feel this pressure. It's not, especially as a young woman raised by evangelicals, like, I was not supposed to be loud, inappropriate. I should be, nice and fun and bubbly. And this is a terrible message, I feel like, for young women or people in general. And when we express ourselves, we should be able to say how we feel. And I think as people of color especially are often not listened to at all if they're angry, and that part is very disgusting, and it's used against them the most, I think. And they're considered uppity or not serious. and just basically ignored. So I think this is something that Spencer and I feel really passionate about, just ourselves as being people who came from backgrounds that were authoritarian potentially. So, and there are countless examples in the media. And I think we could talk about those too, but maybe Spencer has more to say as well.
Yeah. I mean, if you just even go watch C-SPAN, um, you can hear some pretty vile things said on the floor of Congress or in your local state house, but it's said with the right words in the right tone, and it's actually some really awful things. Like, even think something as benign as the national anthem, which is a racist song. It just is. It was written during a time of racism just being an accepted baseline status quo. And God forbid you don't engage with that awful song that's sung to a melody and everybody gets all weepy. Even protesting that or having an opinion about it is somehow disrespectful, therefore not civil. So even things that don't feel like they're directly or indirectly inherently civil or uncivil, this kind of falls in that. It's the proper way to act.
Yeah, no, that's a great thing to point out because it makes you think about even, and this is a super popular image in popular culture, so anyone could understand it. But what was Colin Kaepernick supposed to do other than take a knee and be silent and civil? So that's something that's a great example where in society you're trying to remain civil, but still get your point across, and you just can do no wrong. You can do nothing right. You're in the wrong, even though you're trying to stand up for literally human rights. So
yeah,
and
this has really been hard for, even during, you look at the civil rights era. No, obviously this is glossing over it pretty simply, but the three main faces of that historically are Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and James Baldwin. And they all had three very different approaches, and yet none of them were considered civil or appropriate. They weren't doing it, quote unquote, the right way, and they were all doing it very differently. Malcolm X was a little more militant and segregationist. James Baldwin was definitely more intellectual and heady. And then MLK Jr. Excuse me. We love our three initial names. Even to today,
especially on this podcast.
G.W. Bush, and then DJT, Donald Trump, JFK, MTG,
Joanna McBooty,
right? JMB, short for Jam. Like Door Jam. Long story short, this is a tangent, but the reality is all three of those men did things very differently, and as Joanna was saying, it can be weaponized in so many different directions. So, for example, at City Council, I'm considered uncivil at Holyoke City Council because I drop an F-bomb or I say this is fucking ridiculous. That's a word. That's an adverb. It's not adverse to anybody. It's to it's to express the strength of my frustration. It's to modify that. And then in the same conversation, dehumanizing language like users, referring to the houseless population with drug addiction. I don't see them as actively doing something awful. I see people with a medical issue of addiction and sickness, and not in the way that Adolf Hitler was describing sickness. I mean, truly, like, these people need help, and they're not. Yes, everybody's responsible for their life, but to say the word user is to imply guilt. They're doing this on purpose, junkie. Like they want to be here in this situation. And that's the civil way of saying it, apparently. That's what the chief of police says, Chief Pratt. That's what he refers to them as. very casually. It's no different than calling them he, her, Mrs., Mister, Miss, um, and that's a very dehumanizing word. So that's quote unquote civil. So civility politics is really whoever is in power is the one deciding what's the acceptable terms, what's the acceptable topics of conversation. Um, you know, you bring up race or gender or anything, and then they say you're a social justice warrior. They're trying to disarm you and get the argument about something else than the actual issue at hand. And that's the tool. It's just another term of civility politics. Is most recently the Queen of England has passed on, and she lived a nice long age with her great health care, subsidized by her tax-paying subordinates. And anybody points out that, yeah, okay, she was a philanthropist, but philanthropy is a tool of capitalism, and that money is inefficiently spent. So even her good qualities is fundamentally flawed as a system. But you point out the fact that, listen, no good monarch is still a monarch. If you're a good person, you would have abdicated that and you would have dissolved the monarchy and given the land back to the people. So she's not a good person. She's still a colonizer. She's still benefiting from the colonizing. But God forbid, it's too soon. We can't have discussions too soon. It's like after every school shooting. Thoughts and prayers, we can't talk politics now. No, we have to talk politics. We have to talk policy. And the reality is, using your emotions, using your eyes, ears, and your defense mechanisms can be weaponized against you in civility politics. And one way to fight it is to understand what's happening, when it's happening, and to call it out and say, no, you're trying to distract from this issue, and you need to redirect the conversation. It's like dealing with a toddler. Look at the former commander-in-chief, Donald Trump. This guy is the king of uncivil civility politics. Well, what about this, that? Move the target, change the conversation, change the issue about how you're saying it and how mean you are.
Yeah, the whole purpose of saying it's to delegitimize your argument. So like because you're angry, what you're saying doesn't matter. Because you're not saying it the way you should say it, it doesn't matter. And you're right, that's not true. It's not fair. And I think oftentimes I do try to have a certain way when I speak to governments or certain people where I adhere to those social expected civility norms, because you're right. Like if it's depending on the audience, if we say one wrong thing, and we've been in other situations where this has happened too, like it's come down to the fact where a politician or a local public servant, in my opinion, is demanding respect from one of us, and there's a point where it's about policy, and the fact that we can't swear or talk about things in a passionate way. It's really limiting. And I think about this as we are white individuals. So I can only imagine, again, what it must be like for more marginalized individuals, for people of color. And so I just want people to know, like, do not feel alone, and please don't feel discouraged from speaking up. Still make your public comments, still address your city council, your select board, whoever it may be. And, maybe then follow up in an email when you're feeling a little less angry, but your feelings are valid. And people should not be using these tactics to illegitimize actual things in the community that really need to be addressed. And that I think that happens a lot. And it's something to definitely be aware of.
And to piggyback on what you're saying, as most people probably figured out, I'm a mid-30s white guy with an education. So I have an advantage. I get shushed, but I can go further than most people, because a white guy getting heated is a passionate man. So there's even layers to what you present out in what your body is, what your body language is, how you dress. Those things will also dictate how the civility politics will be applied to you. Mm-hmm. You can wear a nice suit and a tie and say some pretty vile things in a calm tone, and people will say that's a straight shooter right there. But God forbid, like you see in this Pennsylvania election, Donald Trump, who always wears a suit, he's never not worn a suit when he's out in public. He projects this, businessman, professional look. And the only insult he can think of John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, a Democrat, is that he looks like a drug user because he wears a hoodie. He's even trying to weaponize this regular looking dude. Hoodie does not equate drug use, and drug use is not inherently bad. So both really shameful insults that don't really matter, but
are being used to literally delegitimize someone,
right?
Who
exactly.
may have, and not like I'm saying I'm a Democrat either, but like they're probably do not have as bad policy choices as Donald Trump. So exactly, the more authoritarian or far right or ridiculous you are, the more apt you are to use these tactics
and
too.
Doing things quote unquote the right way.
Right.
Which who decides the right way?
Exactly.
Well,
the
right way is the wealthy, and how have the wealthy separated themselves? Well, you have to dress right, which costs money. You have to, and not only you have to be taught how to dress. What's the appropriate thing?
For each situation, exactly.
And it's like they have all this coding, and we all know it exists, but you're not necessarily clued into it. But it's just like any other culture, but when it's the dominant culture, and the insidious thing, just like everything else in white supremacy and Christianity, is to say that you're being civil.
You need to be civil.
While
you need
calling
to,
people users.
Right.
But that's civil somehow. And it's like, well, you're actually dehumanizing, so I don't see how that's civil.
Right.
It's fair to know who you are. And you hear this stuff about in the transphobic conversation too, like we should know who they are. That's the civil right thing to do. That way nobody will be duped by them. And
it's like, oh my gosh.
Do you need literally everything spelled out for you? And that's kind of, this is my, I'm trying to understand what what is the drive here? And
straight fear and confusion, I feel.
And it is.
And hate.
In ways, it's simple. It makes things black and white. It makes things palatable. And, it makes people comfortable. And, when somebody says there's a dog whistle in there, it's like, oh, you got to do it the right way. I have no idea what that means, but it means that's a saying you hear, don't you? You're not doing it the right way. You're getting too uppity with the counselors, and you're.
Oh yeah, I told you my
it's
mom
not
even
their
joked.
Fault. They're listening to the constituents, and it's like, well, then I'm mad at the constituents. I don't know. It's like, okay, cool. Well, they represent the constituents, so I'm getting mad at the constituents through them. Deal with it.
It's just a tactic, though. Literally, and we both have many times multiple city councils don't love our approaches. I'm honestly a little bit more sweet than you, but I'll still say if I'm upset, and I really focus on the last summer. They are all public record. People could watch them. The Northampton City Council just going on and on about how they need people to be respectful and talk to them nicely. It's just that alone, just move on. If you've upset your community enough that they feel like they need to chime in during public comment, which is legal, and tell you where to go.
Whether it's inappropriate or not.
Sorry if you don't like that.
To go shove it up your ass.
Yeah,
welcome to America, bitch.
This is their time. You're literally, you do not get to dictate that time. And I just think it's sick that people need to hear, if your people are upset, I'm sorry. I know it's difficult to hear when someone's upset. I also don't love conflict. But if I was in a position, I work in a position now where I have to hear if someone's upset about something. Mm-hmm. And if I don't feel that they're being civil, I don't get to just stop them and tell them not to talk to me that way, too. Yeah, so it's definitely a power thing as well.
We can both admit, it sucks being yelled at. And it's not,
I get
we can talk about effectiveness, too.
I understand, yeah. Sometimes I actually try to remain calm and not get upset, like I mentioned, so that I can get a point across, because I feel that personally as a white person that, let someone, a person of color, or someone who needs to maybe pop off more than me, if I'm feeling in the state that I can hold it together, maybe I'll reach these schools with some of the words that I'm saying if they can't hear anyone else. But that's also not, some people, like, we all deserve to speak our minds and have our emotions be validated and heard, especially when it's a group of people selected and voted in by the people, when it's during public comment. Like, I guess if it's your church or your family, it's a lot more upsetting because you kind of have to decide if you how connected you stay to that entity treating you that way.
Like, I can speak.
The government, I feel like they don't get to really do that. Like, it's not.
And I think I can speak to a very specific instance, specifically with Northampton City Council. I mentioned Council President Nash earlier in the episode, but first of all, they in their intro to their meeting, however you want to call the meeting, they have a whole thing about, hey, let's keep it to a minute and a half, which is reasonable, I guess. So everybody gets a chance to keep things moving on. People do better with the time structure. I kind of disagree with it, but I also kind of understand it.
I mean, they're a town, I will say, just to give people context, they're a town where a lot of people show up for public comment. Do I like that they lowered the amount of time and then went on a civility politics rant right after that? No. It feels like they'd rather be yelled at for less amount of time. But as someone who used to go to meetings that ended at like midnight and started at like, they really did have to be.
Put
it was
people
a lot.
In a box.
It was a lot.
It's like we do here. It's like we have to put ourselves in a
There's
box.
There's two sides,
or else
but
we'll talk for 3 hours,
right?
And we'll beat into the minutia, and I get it. But the issue with them is they go on this whole thing about effectiveness and blah blah blah, totally devaluing people's emotions, feelings, thoughts,
exactly.
Diversity of opinion, because some people find it outright disgusting and offensive that I believe in abolishing the police. That's considered a disgusting point of view to Northampton cop wife. That's an actual person who anonymously shows up, which should be
for
a crime.
For safety reasons.
You come in and you talk mad trash and for your fascist and protect your fascist spouse, and then you argue that you need to be protected. It's like, why?
Your cop husband has a gun in your home with you. Like, you're not unsafe. These people are unreal.
And they miss the point. They project so much. I don't care if listen, you can have your fascist views and you can say them as loud and proud as you want. I'm not one of those people that's going to say, oh, you should be gagged. I believe in the First Amendment and concepts like this, even with people I vehemently disagree with, even if they're dehumanizing. Go ahead. Tell us who you are. Please. You're doing me a favor. Like, you're just doing me a favor. You're doing the world a favor. You're being honest. And
no, you're right. The point you made, though, is that they're usually the wife cops are usually anonymous, which is frustrating but they would always cut us off for being uncivil, I think.
And they're over there saying crazy.
Yeah, but I have to give my name in my town. So it's interesting.
For example, and it's been long enough, and I'll tell further on my specific issue with Northampton. So they had a special session at one point where it was on about the upcoming special investments or whatever for the next 5 years. So one of the things was cop cars, investing in a whole new fleet. And they were having a hard time with their current fleet because they weren't using it properly and abusing the vehicles, yada, yada, yada. Typical mismanagement, and yet they wanted another couple mil to replace their whole fleet over the next 5 years. I think they should be walking on the beat more if they're going to exist. But again, I'll go into the minutia about what I think about that at some other episode. But basically, prior to this, there was an op-ed written by Counselor Garrick Perry, who I know personally through some very close friends of mine. He's married to a friend of mine's very close friend. So I have 2 degrees of separation. I've spent over the last 10, 15 years socialized with this counselor. He was a bar manager in town, part of the nightlife. I'm in food service. We're on good terms, right? So I think this guy's cool. And he didn't like the way that a bunch of abolitionists, specifically from Northampton and Abolition Now, Nan, spoke to him at public comment, and he went to the Gazette, the local newspaper, and wrote an op-ed. They gave him the platform of a lot of words for an op-ed, and he basically wrote a diatribe from the point of view of a father, like he's talking to children, telling them about this is how the world is and how to be effective. And unfortunately, I do have to bring up race here, as he is a black man, which his experience is very valid, just like anybody else's. But he weaponized his point of view, saying, if anybody would know, it's me. Meanwhile, he's talking to a group of people in Northampton Abolition Now, which is a very diverse group. Women, non-binary, men alike, all different ethnicities, not majority white either. So he's punching down on a marginalized crowd from the point of position of power. And I was absolutely floored. I was ashamed to say I thought this guy would do a good job. Like, I can't believe right out the gate he's swinging at people I agree with but not affiliated with officially. So at this meeting where there was a special project, they didn't have a time limit to talk. So I went off. And I talked about investing in the police because Northampton had pledged to defund the police and start working on an action plan. This new council with Garrick being a rookie on the council, a new guy. So he has come out the gate talking down to people I respect and agree with. Totally misunderstanding white supremacy. Totally misunderstanding abolition. Totally misunderstanding the prison industrial complex while carrying water for the chief of police and their budget. And telling us we're the stupid ones. We need to sit down and let the adults handle things. And this is how things will get done. And I don't have to listen to people that I find are disrespectful to me. I'm paraphrasing his op-ed. You can go look for it. It's on the Gazette's website. You can make your decision if you feel like it's condescending. If you're coming from the point of view of an abolitionist, you can tell this person's never done one day of research, never done one day of empathizing with this point of view. Clearly didn't understand. He just thinks we get off on this. Like we love being, abolitionists just like being divisive. And that's actually not true. The goal is a peaceful harmony, new solutions, buzzword, buzzword, buzzword. And the reality is this guy talked a lot of trash.
Yeah, I mean...
And I let him have it. And the whole council. It wasn't just him, but I brought up his op-ed. And I would say it all again. Did I go off the handle? Absolutely. But I would do it again. I nothing I said is something I don't 1,000% believe. Fast forward a couple months later, my good friend, the people that are connected, heard the story through his spouse. So they didn't even see the source material. They didn't really consider my point of view. They never even talked to me. And they came out the gate talking to me about how I should be talking and conducting myself and talking about effectiveness and how I can't talk to a black man that way. Well, first of all, that black man is in a position of power. He's still a man. And I'm another man telling him, you're talking down to us like we're in your school pod, like we're not your children. And you spoke about a group and an idea that you clearly know nothing about. And if you did, you would know I'm one of them because I've definitely talked to you about this before. So I said this to my friend, and we basically left it at that. She apologized for coming at me hot, but ultimately agreed to disagree. She's just like, I don't want to be anything in this political realm. I don't want to be in the middle of this. I can kind of respect that, but I have a hard time. I'm not going to chase this person down and force them. If they want to listen to this podcast, they want to call me and pick my brain, or they want to hear my thoughts on it, they're more than welcome to. That door will never be closed. But the reality is this civility politics has created an environment where there's an equivalency. Because you're avidly anti-fascist or anti-prison or anti-cop is somehow you're just as bad as the cops beating black people in the street. It's not the same. They're not equivalent. And this is the danger of civility politics and how it affects my life. I'm not friends with these people actively. I love them, but they stopped texting. I got the message. They don't want to talk, and that's okay. But this is how civility politics, because they're mad that I got mad. Right. They're not mad about what I'm mad about. Right. They're not even thinking about it. They don't even care. They're not even going to look. They're not going to read a book about abolition. They're not even going to read a thing. You see, my dog is getting upset.
JJ is upset too now.
My dog JJ decided to join the podcast today. We thought we'd give it a try.
He's always welcome.
but he's my emotional support dog that does the exact wrong thing at the wrong time every time. Anyways, civility politics is, it's a weapon that gets wielded, and it's really unfortunate. And luckily, I have lovely people around me who can also bridge the gap and do some explaining so that the emotions are taken out of it. But again, this is extra work we have to do because of these made up civility politics rules. And I believe firmly, and I'm going to speak my piece, but I'm not going to chase you down. I'm not going to beat it over your head, because that would be uncivil. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to speak my truth and speak truth to power, and not take a day off. Like, there's no taking a day off. I don't want to talk about prison abolition. There's days I'm not like actively stressing about it, because you need joy, you need breaks. But if it comes up, like, I can't believe this person did that, it's like, yeah, I know. Isn't that crazy that this is the outcome our system gives us? Like, I know that's a really vague example, but that's how I feel sometimes. It's like, you could always, within 3 steps of a conversation, it's like the game of Kevin Bacon. You could bring it back to prison abolition if you really wanted to.
I know. If someone like asked me my interest, I might even just say like abolishing prison, sadly. So like that's where it could end up even. And that's why you make a good point though, that like if people,
when is the right time?
Well,
people? When's the right time?
Well, and your point about community and family, like losing friends potentially just because like they don't like that we're angry about something that they may not understand about. Like just because they are not aware of what's going on and refuse to learn, like your anger or my anger or anyone's anger should still be something that like our friends also like can accept and care about, and our civility with them, you'd hope there'd be grace. So I do feel for people.
I give them grace too. I can see why somebody would come to the defense. Hey man, you're rocking the boat.
Right, I get it.
That's a normal. This is a really hard topic to discuss because there is something about that. There is something to the don't rock the boat, and
well, it's programmed into us, so that's why we're going to say that
but
too.
But it is human pack thinking to try to equalize.
Well, we want community, we want connections. I mean, we want,
and you don't want even
to get along with each other.
I think at the end of the day, when somebody's telling you to calm down, if they're your loved one, they do just want your blood pressure to come down because they know it's bad for you.
Well, yeah.
And so it's not, don't feel bad if you feel like somebody should take a chill pill. But it's a matter of how it's like when you're training a dog. I mean, not to compare humans to dogs, but you have to work with that person. You have to, okay, why does this get them so animated? Why does this get them so upset?
Yes, and like people that care about us eventually should think about that. So I think, our message really is like, you don't, I guess, let it get you down if you're feeling like you have to be civil all the time. Like, you do not have to be.
And not only not get you down, I mean, the reality is no matter what way you do it. For example, there was I'm going to have weed head brain, but there was Tommy Lauren, the right-wing propagandist, internet personality, beautiful blonde Barbie, Kayleigh McEnany wannabe. She was supposed to be speaking, I want to say it was Arizona State University or some university out west, and basically she got shouted out. She got shouted down. These people were not being civil.
Right.
Okay? They weren't being civil. She had to basically bail from her speaking engagement at this university, and she was very upset and went on a tirade afterwards. So it doesn't matter which way you do it, civil, uncivil, the oppressor, the awful people will always make themselves the victim.
Exactly.
May as well be aggressive. They don't know what to do when you're aggressive.
Because otherwise she got to speak, and her speeches are discussing like basically white supremacist rants that shouldn't be allowed in a progressive
Build
campus.
the wall,
But the students fund those colleges too. So for the majority of your student body is angry, like, why are you letting this happen? So I will share on the website, theweedout.com, www.theweedout.com, like a number of instances where like Spencer is highlighting a great example of people who horrible fascists, and I would consider them almost neo-Nazis, like very not okay individuals. Ben Shapiro, Tommy Loren, Milo Yiannopoulos, they are, and people, the campuses didn't want them there eventually. It was a small group that would, get them on there. And you're right, if they didn't, because the students didn't act civilly, they're the ones that are considered horrible.
And if they wrote essays and did it quote unquote the right way, went through the channels, people would have said, you know what they would have meant? Listen, just let them have their moment. They would have been talked down. Mm-hmm. No, fuck this person.
Like, you don't debate fascists or give them a platform.
Or oppressors. We don't have to call them fascists.
Right,
just people
fair.
that think that hierarchy is inherent in human nature.
And just because they're saying nice, horrible things,
in calm words,
in calm ways.
It's almost like it's like when bigotry, racism, and xenophobia have synergy.
Yeah,
That's
it's just
civility
horrible.
politics.
So I think it's just really good to be aware of and consider, especially when you're dealing with the government, but even like we've pointed out, like individuals close to you in your life, or
it's civility. Civility politics is a form of cronyism. That's really what it is at the end of the day, and that's the way we have to look at it.
Right.
And think about and then it's the new way of saying is when you're being a wokeist. I don't really know how to tie this together, but I guess what I'm getting at is like, no matter what you do it genuinely in not genuinely, disingenuously. Thank you, Spencer, for your slow brain. But no matter what you do, if you're speaking to power structures, they're gonna find a way,
right,
to delegitimize. You can literally, it's a tale as old as time. This is the dance. Your employer. Look at quiet quitting.
Beauty and the Beast,
right.
Literally.
Right.
Like,
it's just
it tells all the time,
it's a
and
way
you're
to talk
so
you
right.
out of your anger or out of your valid emotion or your valid point of view, and to rationalize and legitimize really fucked up points of view.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's the part where I think everyone has to be careful. Like, you're not wrong for being upset about something and wanting to express yourself. And if it feels wrong inherently inside of you to be told to have to act nice about things that seem really off, that should be like, okay, yeah, that actually is horrible. We shouldn't have to just sit there and be nice when things are actually terrible.
Right. And who's defining, tone and all that stuff? Because here's the thing.
That's the thing.
Garrett Perry's his op-ed in the Gazette, which we'll link to in our show notes.
Yes, we will.
You judge for yourself. Is this being talked down to? Imagine it from the point of view of somebody that has been striving for abolition or fighting some oppressive structure in the society. This guy basically saying, you need to trust your elected officials. That's not how it works, man. We elected you. Yes, it's representative politics. It's not a direct democracy. But at the same time, you'll notice that counselors like in Holyoke, Linda Vakin, wonderful counselor from Ward 5 maybe. She's, in my opinion, a white supremacist. She uses all the dog whistles, silent majority. She uses her constituents as a shield all the time. Well, I get lots of emails, and I talk to everybody in the neighborhood.
They do that in Northampton, too, though, with the silent majority thing.
Yeah, and there's no, like, can you show me the letters and emails you got? Like, I would love to see some tangible, quantifiable, like, we have 15 people here saying against this, and you're saying there's so many people that are for us. Stop talking down to us. This works both ways. And, I'll wrap up my final thoughts on civility politics. One other way that towns and counselors and politicians and people in power will tell you to mind your own B's and Q's is they'll say, you're going to another town that maybe you work in or you shop in and you're a pedestrian in sometimes, and they're having a meeting about spending money on roads and streets, and you want to be, hey, can you make it a little more pedestrian friendly? They'll say, you don't pay taxes here. Okay, cool. So I still am getting to use the one right I have left. It's the First Amendment. I'm allowed to redress my grievance with any government as long as those laws apply to me. I go into your town, all your laws apply to me, even though I don't pay taxes here.
You're spending money in their town, supporting their
Forget
businesses
that, but
too.
I'm subject to your
But
laws.
you're right.
I'm allowed
That
to have
shouldn't even
my
matter.
opinion.
Anyone
and,
should
and
be
you
able
can't
to
tell me
speak
that
up.
they're not. It's not a valid opinion. Yo, I'm the
Agreed.
one using the sidewalks,
Agreed.
and I'm spending money here, so it's not invalid. So the added bonus when you pay taxes, you get to vote in the representation. So yes, I may not vote anybody in Northampton, but the one tool I have is talking shit. It's the only tool I have about Northampton policies. Even though I don't live and pay taxes there, I work there. I work out of there. I'm in town. I frequent many businesses there. My friends live there. My friends' kids live there. I have opinions on how things should be done. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean you're going to listen to me, but maybe I'll inspire other people here, in this forum. And that's why it's important to speak out. And public speaking and public comment is nerve-wracking. Mm-hmm. But sometimes you get introduced to, new issues you never even heard of because somebody's keeping an eye on it. Like there are things in a friend of ours, Owen, and the founding member of the Workers' Party in Western Mass. He, clued me into the shot spotter thing in Holyoke because he lives in Holyoke, and he kind of clued me into the more minute details because it's not being covered in mainstream media, and that's okay. But this is why him talking in public comment. Then I reached out to him. I was like, oh shoot. Can you give me more information about them?
Right. You can meet neighbors that may have similar values, which is important.
And you can also know who to stay away from.
Exactly.
There's some neighbors on my street. I'm kind of glad they put out their crazy religious signs. I'm not going to bother you because, you're pro-life until birth, because you also have a Blue Lives Matter sticker on your car, but you're pro-life. It's very bizarre to me. You're cool with them killing people, but you're not cool with abortions. All right.
Oh, man.
And then somehow I'm being uncivil for bringing up the A word, abortion.
Yeah.
It's pro-choice.
I didn't even know that was like a thing as a person who can have,
that's some 90s
as a person who could have been pregnant.
Political correctness is the cousin of civility
weird.
politics,
That's
is it not?
So weird to
and
me.
And political correctness in a way is kind of like today's woke. Like when people say, "Oh, you're being PC, you're being politically correct," is used as a negative thing.
Yes,
Whereas political correctness, kind of on its face, is a version of
civility.
Is civility politics.
It really is.
They're African American. You can describe they're a black skinned person. That's not. You don't know if they're African American. You're assuming they're African just because they're black. That's not less offensive. It's more offensive when you describe every black person as an African American. Mm-hmm. When some of them don't identify as that. It's up to them to define that. So that's where PC can go wrong, where, civility politics can actually end up being offensive.
Exactly.
So it's fool's gold. You can end up offending people trying to be civil, is my point. And because it's not made with regard to what the wishes of the affected are. It's made because white supremacy relies on strict rules.
Yeah, well, the oppressor still remains on top. Then
you need strict rules. That's really the end of the day. These people are closeted S&M people, and they need to just let it loose, and they need to get somebody to tell them the rules and just keep it in their house or their safe space. And I mean that as legitimately as possible. Go work out your kinks somewhere else. That's I don't understand why we're working it out at city council. There's people dying in the street, and you're talking about you're mad that I dropped an F-bomb.
I agreed that it's absurd, and that's why we're here today talking about it.
So this is the part of the episode where we're going to be wrapping up. Just a reminder, check out our website. We put all our, facts that we've spouted off here, so that there's a way to fact check us. But if you just type out the Weed Out, there's the same avatar in everyone. So on Twitter, we're the Weed Out. I think on Instagram and Twitch, I think it's the Weed Out 413. We'll always post these things, on our website. Mm-hmm. All these links are on our website. So you can go to weedout.com. That's the simplest way. You can then connect to us. We're kind of slow on the TikTok and the YouTube and the Twitch. We're just getting our content, kind of figuring out what's going to be our best way. Mm-hmm. We're pretty active on Twitter.
Totally.
Because Twitter is an easy medium there's a lot of abolitionists on Twitter.
I've been on Twitter a long time. It's just a great platform. But
Twitter, just like all of them, is a cesspool. But there are good pockets. Just like there's good pockets on TikTok.
Agreed. I just like social media.
It's just a different medium. Joanna and I are both more wordy people, so we are a little more familiar, I would say. But keep a lookout for all our social media stuff. Share it with your friends. If you can't remember any of it, just remember it's The Weed Out, and you just tell them to go to theweedout.com. Everything is there. They don't even need a podcast player. We can play straight from the website. But, we're working on getting on Apple. We're currently on
a number of platforms, Google, Podbean, iHeartRadio, and a couple more. But yeah, check us out, theweedout.com. And we were going to talk a little bit about local news before we fully wrap it up, because Spencer and I have been writing for the shoestring.org, a local online publication now for, I don't know,
this summer.
Since the beginning of the summer, maybe.
Yeah, we'll be putting our third article out tomorrow. So roughly one a month since we started helping them out.
Yeah, and they're great. They're independent journalists. They report about this community, Western Mass. Please give them a follow at theshoestring.org. Support them if you can. Join their mailing list as well.
And they're pretty active on Twitter, but they're also
and
on
Instagram.
Facebook.
Yep.
They do a fun little thing where a couple years ago, they did trading cards of all the corrupt police officers in Northampton. That was fun. They had a whole series.
That was fun.
So they're firmly they're definitely a more straightforward journalism, but they have I would say an abolitionist bent. They do shoot it straight down the middle, but they definitely spend more time covering stories about corruption in local government and focusing on local issues that people can wrap their heads around. Since we don't really have anything, even the Gazette just laid off basically their whole staff. Like
right.
We lost a really good investigative journalist, Dusty Christensen. He's now a freelance writer or something.
Not sure. We can look that up.
I think he published something on the Globe, but can't really buy the Globe either. I mean, they're in the bag for the police unions, and it sucks. I mean, steal their articles. I recommend if somebody will gift you articles to the Globe or the Washington Post, definitely read them, because there is some good stuff there, but there's a lot of garbage that is laundered propaganda, and it's actually quite alarming.
Yeah, so that's why so online publications like the shoestring.org are using local individuals and journalists, local journalists, independent journalists.
White dudes that went to Ivy League schools. It's a very diverse. They pull from a diverse crowd of writers.
Yeah. And our most recent article is focused on the reinstatement of the police chief Haig in Greenfield, Mass. So there's a lot going on with that in general. There were community members along with city councilors who were concerned about the mayor's decision to reinstate the police chief. So our article goes into a lot about that and talks about, a little bit about the community groups and what they're doing. Chief Haig had been on leave since the beginning of May. So that leave followed a verdict finding him and the city of Greenfield liable for racial discrimination against another police officer, Officer Patrick Buchanan, in a civil suit. So our article actually just touches mostly on the mayor deciding to reinstate the chief, talks a little bit about an internal investigation that they had going on in Greenfield and what that entailed. And then we mentioned the community group, the People's Budget of Greenfield, because they really reached out and gave us some information, just like what's going on with the community members in town. So if you're a community member in Greenfield and you'd like to get in touch with the People's Budget, it's peoplesbudgetgreenfield.com, and we'll put that on our website. And please know if you're in the Greenfield area or you just want to zoom in from another town, there's a city council meeting this Wednesday at 6 p.m. And you can access that at greenfield-mass.gov. Again, I'll post that on our website. But it's just interesting to hear more about the reinstatement of Chief Haig. And I hear from after writing this article that there will be a good number, I think, of community members maybe making public comment, some uncivil, some not civil, depending on their feelings. And I think that kind of leads us into our good news, for us, this is good news, but 50 residents had showed up for a standout that they did, that community members did once this reinstatement went basically online, and that was the first week of September. So community organizers, about 50 residents, went and stood at City Hall and gathered to make their voices heard on September 8th. And they're going to do so again at this next city council meeting. So like we said, it's important for us to use our right to public comment and to speak up when we think things are going wrong in our community. So for me, it's really good news to see that my neighbors in Greenfield are working really hard on something, even though it might be difficult talking to your neighbors or talking about these issues. It seems like a lot of people are working together in a nice way, and they have some nice community groups, so that's kind of awesome.
And to piggyback on that and to tie it into civility politics, something I consider really good news and worth following. We'll tag this person's profiles on Facebook and such. He's a counselor for Holyoke City of Holyoke in Massachusetts. His name's Jose Maldonado. He's an abolitionist, and there was been some issues with police. I guess that's putting it lightly in Holyoke.
Mm-hmm.
But he said on Facebook recently, responding to an issue with Holyoke police that the community group was talking about, calling them a gang. No uncertain terms. He was very clear.
Good for Jose.
Very certain terms, rather. He was very clear, very full-chested, and he's since doubled down. And the only people upset, there's been a bunch of people showing support online, which was shocking to me. I figure most people who may agree with that would keep a low profile on Facebook because their neighbors might not react very well. But there's been an outpouring of support. He's been getting approached on the streets, according to him, that people are glad that he's speaking truth to power. He's doubled down on it.
Awesome.
And it's important. Like, it's scary.
Yeah, it is.
It's scary to stand up to these dudes. Go look at what the Sheriff Villanueva in LA is doing. He went after the Civilian Oversight Board because they're compiling evidence against him, covering up for murders in gangs within his department prior to an election. And he's literally using the power of the courts and the subpoena and the warrant process to terrorize appointed leaders, civilian leaders. So it's important when you see a local civilian leader call out the police, know what risk they are taking. They're taking very, very large risks when they do this. So we need to support them, even if that means shooting them an email, a text, being like, "Thank you." You don't have to go out in public and say it. You don't have to do it on a public forum, though. Kudos to you if you do.
Right.
I'll have you back. And just that's some good news. I'm proud
That
to
is good
say
news.
he's a counselor. He's a young man. He's in his 30s. He's lived in this community much longer than I have. He's from here. And there's other great guys on the council, Izzy and Juan and Cocaine. All three of those people have been unbelievable to us. And I don't think they've been that outspoken, but they've been asking the right questions, and they're all newer to the city government system. They're younger people. They're in their late 30s, early 40s, all of these people. Juan has the most experience, and he's still one of the less experienced people on the council because some of these people don't have real jobs. Anyways, good news is that they're speaking back, and they're pushing back in light of tough times. I mean,
Right.
We've had 4 unaccounted for, well, they have charged 2 people, but there's been 4 murders in Holyoke over potentially some drugs or some money. And it's really unfortunate because we're trying to dissuade the city from investing in shot spotter technology. And it's really unfortunate timing. And the police will weaponize this. They will use this to get their little toys when that's not the reason for these crimes. 2 people that have been arrested from Springfield. They're not even Holyoke residents. And this is the problem with, making drugs illegal or making any of these other things illegal. Then people have to take their disputes into their own hands. And then there's violence. And that's unfortunate, and it's really crappy. But then the police weaponize this. But our mayor, also some good news, Josh Garcia, he didn't take this as these tragedies, these 4 deaths, as an opportunity to back the police and give them full-throated support. And he didn't blame them either. He just said, listen, we have to address root causes of violence: housing, food, security, education. So we have some people in our city government that are at least saying the right thing, which is a good change of pace as opposed to the thoughts and prayers. And the officers just need more training and they need more tools.
Absolutely.
That's the old school, lazy way of looking at it. And, that's what, if you don't want to be divisive, you can just say it's lazy. It's lazy, it's hacked, it's unimaginative. And I'm interested to see if Mayor Josh Garcia can withstand any pressure, because the reality is there are people firing guns off in the streets in our city, and who wants that happening? And people want answers and they want results, and sometimes just getting a fancy piece of equipment will placate people and then they'll move on. So I hope he stays strong, and I hope the counselors stay strong and recognize not to take the easy way out on this, because it's not an easy way out. The problem will still exist. So the good news is we have some people in our local politics, shockingly, pushing back.
Yeah, and we have community members in many towns in Western Mass who have formed groups, who work together with their neighbors, and who speak up. So if you'd like to join them, if you haven't already, please do.
And yeah, follow us on our socials. At the Weed Out on Twitter, the Weed Out 413. If you can't find us at the Weed Out, it's either of those handles on any of the major platforms. We will be much more active as we create more content and get more ideas and ways of looking at it. So please visit our website, write us emails, tweet us, DM us, engage with us. Help us create a platform that, other people will have good ideas too. So any sort of comment or critique is welcome. So please feel free to email us, DM us at the Weed Out, weedout.com, at the Weed Out on Twitter, etc., etc., etc. Anything else you'd like to add, Joanna, before we go home today?
No, just that we'll share all our information, like you mentioned, on our website, theweedout.com. I'll link out to any facts we've spoke about, things we've talked about, different articles I think maybe we would all like to just read in our spare time. So, yeah, that's about it.
All right, until next time, keep weeding through the bullshit. Look for us to drop our next episode. Hopefully we'll be doing it with more frequency. Next time, we're not sure what we're going to do next time, but I'm sure it will be something to do with abolition and calling out some horse crap that we see. And then also maybe end it with some good news for y'all. So have a great rest of your day, whenever day this is, and happy travels.
Take care.